Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we'll learn about the posterior intercostal artery. All about that, its origin, its course, its termination and its relation also. So let's move on ahead. So here I have drawn a diagram. As you can see, this is the arc of aorta. We are getting three major branches from the arc of aorta. The first one here is the brachiocephalic trunk. Here, brachiocephalic trunk. From the brachiocephalic trunk, we'll get the right subclavian and the right common carotid. Right? So here we have the right subclavian and here we have the right common carotid. Now from here we are getting two other branches. The first one here is the left subclavian and the left common carotid. So this one is the left subclavian and this is left common carotid. Right? From the left subclavian, now this is the arc of aorta, then this is the descending aorta. We have the first the ascending aorta, then arc of aorta, then descending aorta. Now coming upon the descending aorta. From the descending aorta, we are getting these posterior intercostal arteries. There are total 11 posterior intercostal arteries, as there are 11 intercostal spaces. Right? There are 12 ribs and 11 intercostal spaces. What are intercostal spaces? Let me show you now. Here you can see, here is the first rib, here is the second rib. The space between these two ribs is called the intercostal space, right? So there are 11 intercostal spaces, thus there are 11 posterior intercostal arteries. The first and the second posterior intercostal artery arise from the subclavian arteries branch. Now here, as you can see, from the left subclavian we got the costocervical trunk. Here we have the costocervical trunk, this one. This is the costocervical trunk. From the costocervical trunk, we got another artery that is known as the superior thoracic artery. Right? Then from the superior thoracic, we got the first and the second posterior intercostal artery. Then the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11th posterior intercostal artery arise from the descending aorta. So here we got the origination of the posterior intercostal arteries. Let's write here. Now when we see the origination of the posterior intercostal arteries, the first and the second arise from the superior thoracic artery, which itself comes from the costocervical trunk, which arises from the subclavian artery. Right? Then 3 to 11 arise from the descending aorta. Now coming upon the course of the posterior intercostal artery. The course of the posterior intercostal artery is in the first, it is in the in the costal groove of the rib. First it is present in the costal groove of the rib, then it is present between the pleura and the internal intercostal membrane. As we know that the internal intercostal membrane is the aponeurosis of the internal intercostal muscle. So let me write here internal intercostal membrane. At the angle of the rib, the internal intercostal muscle gives the aponeurosis and becomes a flat. Aponeurosis is basically the flattened sheath or the flattened tendon that is known as the aponeurosis, nothing else. So it is the aponeurosis of internal intercostal muscle. Here I am writing I muscle. Then it is present between the internal intercostal and the innermost intercostal muscle. There are three basically muscles in the intercostal space. The contents of the intercostal muscles and all about that you can watch my another video. So here I'm just writing and telling about that between the internal and innermost intercostal muscle. When it reaches at the costochondral junction, it means the rib and the costal cartilage junction, it terminates by anastomosing with the anterior intercostal artery. There are one posterior intercostal artery in each space, but there are two anterior intercostal arteries in each space. So here I am writing there are about the posterior intercostal artery, that there are total 11 in number, one in each space. Now its termination. As I told you, at the costochondral junction, it terminates by anastomosing with the anterior. Which anterior one? The upper one anterior. As I told you, there are two anterior. So there are two anteriors, the upper one and the lower one. It anastomoses with the upper one. The upper anterior intercostal artery. Right? Now coming upon the relations. Now when we see the relations from the right side, it is behind the azygous vein, the thoracic duct, the esophagus and the sympathetic chain. So here I am writing from the right side. It is behind